to say that our NDE speakers here are also doing a very difficult job, going against the grain and bringing new information to the general public who don't want to hear this information or want to dismiss it out of hand as simply being a problem with brain chemistry. But it's quite profound in the messages and information they have to share. It won't stop, no matter how much ridicule that it receives or how much violent opposition it receives. Those are the normal processes our society goes through before we accept a new idea as being normal and mainstream. But these are the people who are the pioneers in changing our society and the paradigm that we grew up with. Now we get to really drill down and get our specific questions answered. So let's start with this one. Panelists, do you find it to be true that people who've had NDE have trouble with their watches? The batteries run out quickly, or it won't keep correct time. Panelists, anyone can address that?
Oh boy. I'll tell you a story. I haven't been able to wear a watch since my NDE, but a few weeks ago, actually it was early over Labor Day weekend in September. A few of you were down at IANS in San Antonio. We had a big conference for the International Association for Near-Death Studies, and it was my first time going, so I went and I had used my cell phone as my timekeeper. I thought, well, if I can't use a watch, I'm going to use this, right? And this has been bulletproof really for the last couple years. My original phone got crunched during the accident and I replaced it with this one. So I went down to San Antonio and went over, I don't know why I just chose to do this. Jackie knows the story. I went over to the Alamo one afternoon. Our hotel was near the Alamo and I'd never been and I wanted to go see it. And as soon as I got over there, my phone totally blew up. It's the first time it's done it. It started overheating, and I had to shut it down. I actually ended up, over the course of the whole weekend while we were there with all the other NDEers, I had to, I think, reboot it, actually completely wipe it from memory, and download all the firmware 3 times while I was there with all the other NDEers. And I think it, I'm not kidding. So yeah, there is some kind of a funkiness that happens for some of us. I don't know if either of you have had any of that happen. You want to speak to that?
For me, I haven't worn a watch in many years, but I guess one of the reasons I make a point to keep myself in a very light space is I've noticed that a handful of times where I allow frustration to creep in. There are those times when you're working on the computer and the computer slows down or the internet page just won't load, and I'll allow a little bit of frustration to start to creep in, and next thing I know, my computer literally will freeze up on me, and I'll step back, relax, clear my head, and the next thing I know, I look back at the computer and it's working again. And I've done that with my phone a few times too, where there'll be a function in the phone where I'll hit a button to either go to the internet or set up a text message, and it'll just stop, it'll freeze. And I just set it down, leave it alone for a moment, and all of a sudden it starts working again. So, and I've noticed one of the reasons, many reasons why I did like to keep myself in light is I've noticed that when I don't, it seems like that's kind of the universe's way of saying, oh, hey, I'm checking you right here. Kind of keep yourself where you know you're supposed to be. So this is one of the, I believe the universe, God, communicates in a lot of different ways, and to me that's kind of that divine communication coming through to say, nope, stay light.
Okay, yes, next question. This one is directed to Dr. Hill. The question, if you could please review for us 5 aspects learned through the NDE experience based on the research that you showed in your book.
Thank you for that. The 5 main attributes, I think you've heard in one fashion or another from all of our panelists, but I'll expand on the 5 briefly because otherwise we'll take a tremendous amount of time. Your consciousness is meaningful. And what it means by that is that we are all part of God's expression. And Earth is a school that we're here to learn difficult things or good things. And we learn through adversity. What are we learning? We're learning how to love, or how to get close to the source or God on our own accord, for our own free will. Up in the spiritual realm, as was described, everything is interconnected. And up in heaven, it's easy to love, as Nancy was saying, because there's no conflict, there's no death, there's no sickness, and you're plugged into the love and bliss of heaven. It's a great place to feel that bliss, but not a great place to develop your own personhood through your own free will and to learn the hard lessons. It's like reading about Africa and learning all the wonderful things there, as well as the poverty and the bug bites and all the negative things, or seeing the beauty of Africa. It's different actually being there than reading about it. And we're here in School Earth to learn something. And each of you are part of that, and each of you have great meaning and purpose in your life, even if you don't always necessarily feel that. And we're all helping each other grow in love in this life and then beyond. So expansive was touched upon. As Rex was saying, his consciousness is part of the whole, the unity. And we are all, as the Bible says, Jesus says, I am the Father is in me. And in a way, that's kind of true with all of us, in that we all have God within us. We're not God, obviously, but we're of God. And so when Rex felt that expansiveness and interconnection with everything, he was I think he was sensing that unity. And eternity goes both directions. And eternity is a very long time. So people fail to see that this School Earth is just a blip to our true existence, and that we really go home. Okay, number 2, you have a unified interconnection with all living beings, including God, and we just discussed that. 3, the fabric of the universe is made of love, and you're its thread. You are so important that time will not unfold without your thread of the way it's supposed to. So, and imagine a tapestry, and all the threads are interconnected to each other. Your little thread is integral to that whole tapestry. And that tapestry behind it is God, and God is love, and it was all made in love. Okay, and relatedly, you're deeply and conditioned love beyond earthly measure, and that was well expressed, better than I can express it, because these folks here have experienced that love. Indians have come back and they have a hard time describing it. They haven't described it because there's no earthly comparison how strong that love is. Candy here told me once that if you added all the love that you've ever had in your life and put it all in one moment, it wouldn't compare to the love that she experienced up there. Other people say their whole being was like bathed in a pool of love. And then finally you have nothing to fear. It's ironic that so many people here on earth fight death, fear death, do everything they can to ward off death. When people die, they're beside themselves. When they face their own mortality, some people are beside themselves. How ironic it is when they get up to heaven, at least from near-death experiences, they kick and scream when they come back. Nancy's experience is pretty typical. Most Indians don't want to come back. In fact, they fight not to come back. So, thanks.
All right, thank you, Brother. All right, another question here. This is very appropriate. How can we love ourselves? This is a question for the experts. How can we love ourselves? Anyone? Anyone, all of you, can answer that question.
When you realize that you are a spark of God, we're not separate, you know, and we think we're separate. We live in this world of duality, and I read so many things in spirituality. Get rid of the duality, you know, be one, get rid of the duality. Well, you know what? It's here for a purpose. And one of the things that I did learn over the course of my growing after the experience was whatever level you carry in your heart. This was made very, very clear to me, but wherever your heart is, wherever your soul is, that's what you carry with you to the next realm. So if you have fear, if you have self-hatred, if you have all of these human traits that we want to get rid of some of them, and if you cling to them like they're real, well, guess what? You're going to carry them over to the other side. And I really, that hit home to me probably more than anything. And what I do now is every single night before I go to bed, I can look back in the day and I can go, wow, you really messed up there, girlfriend. I mean, there's a lot of things I've done, you know, that I'm not perfect. I'm thrown right back into the D that I was before, but with a new direction manual. And I'm still learning that. I'm still applying it. But when I can look at a bird or a dog or another human and see the love there, am I not disgracing the glory of God by not loving myself? And when I thought about that, I was like, so if I don't love myself, then in essence, I truly am saying that I have no love for God. And it's not easy sometimes. It's not easy, but you know what? It's a choice. We were given a gift, and we were given, all of us were given the gift of self-love. A lot of us has just, we've never picked it up and taken it and put it into our hearts. And so every day I realize it's a choice. It is a choice. We were given a gift. Do you want it? You don't have to take it. And for 57 years, I didn't take it. Now I realize every morning, I can love myself or I can hate myself. And if I love myself and I lean into that love of how I was created and the person that I am, my day is going to unfold. And I may not know what's going to happen, but another thing I learned really, really recently was the word trust. And I thought after my experience I had trust. I had about 90%, I think. And about 2 weeks before the IONS conference, I guess I kind of had a come to Jesus meeting with my own soul, if you know what I mean. And I realized that I still had a tiny, tiny bit that didn't trust for whatever reason, that had doubts. And all of a sudden, I knew again I had to make a choice. And when my heart made that, again, my life changed. And I'm standing on solid ground. I'm standing on God's solid ground of trust. And I don't know what's going to happen with the rest of my life, and I don't know what's on the other side. You know, none of us know completely. But you know what? If you don't love yourself, you're going to carry part of that to the next realm as well. So, when you go home tonight, look in the mirror. Look at the person looking back at you. Really look. And say, you know what? It may take a while, but I'm going to love you. And if you really want it with all your heart, I found that God answers that. And He, in one way or another, will show you how to love yourself.
It's beautiful. I'm going to take this, I think that was perfect. I don't think I can really add to that. So I'm going to take this from a different perspective. One of my favorite cosmologists, her name is Laura Danling, she made the statement that regarding the creation itself, or regarding, let's just say, the Big Bang, the formation of the universe, if 1 part in a quintillion is off, 1 part in a quintillion, that's an astronomical number. I think that's 1 with 18 zeros. That means creation doesn't happen. The universe does not happen. Existence as we know it does not happen. I think it really puts into perspective just how important every single piece, every atom, every subatomic particle is to creation itself. So if that's true, what does that say about every single one of us? Every one of us has our place, and it's very important. So getting into this idea of self-love, how can we truly be at our best, not only for ourselves, but for those around us, if we aren't loving ourselves first? We have that self-love, that we can convey that to the people around us that we love and convey that to the world. And yes, you are absolutely deserving by the very nature of your existence. When you are love, tap into that love, draw into that love, draw it out, and project it out into the world through your being. You do deserve it. And know that you are important, and that whatever you do, whatever you say, your thoughts, they matter. You matter.
I'm just going to be real quick. I'll give you, I don't know who asked that question, but there are a few exercises. I do actually love the mirror exercise, and I tell a lot of people who ask that same question to do that same thing. Just go to a mirror and smile and ask for help loving yourself, or just say, I love you. And a few other ideas too. Get into the habit of once a day or in the evening or something, thinking about all the good things that you did during the day instead of all the places that you screwed up. And some people like to keep a journal. I actually don't anymore. I don't write them down. I just think about it in, kind of in my head, and I'm grateful to God or to the divine that I didn't screw up today. And I don't dwell on the stuff that I did wrong. I focus on the things that I think are cool about me. Like for me, if I had a really great day at the easel, I'll be like, wow, I did a really great painting today. Thank you, divine. Because I understand that that's not necessarily just me, that's part of my connection to the Creator. So that's another one. Just think about the wonderful things that you did during the day, or just the positive things that you did, and try not to dwell so much on the negative. And just think about how cool of a person you are. What separates you from someone else? What's different and unique about you? What are your talents? What are your gifts that you can bring to the world? And then spend time doing those things. Because the more you do the things that you love, or you're good at, or you feel compelled to do, like me with painting, for me painting is really a spiritual practice. And the more you spend some time doing those, you don't have to spend time all day, but take some time out of your day to work on those things that the divine put into your heart. That'll make you love yourself, I think, over time. You'll start to develop an appreciation for who you are, for the gifts that you do have, and learn to focus on those. And I will say too that there are people that are have had maybe a very traumatic experience in childhood, and for those folks, I would totally encourage psychotherapy. I had some pretty traumatic experiences as a kid too, and a really good psychotherapist helped me get past a lot of that negativity that I brought into my adulthood. That's beyond what you can probably learn, in my book or in Dee's book. A good psychotherapist will help with a lot of this if you're really struggling, if you're in a really bad place. So that's my one plug for psychotherapy.
Even though I'm a psychotherapist, I'm going to approach this from a very different angle, kind of more from a Christian angle. And one of my favorite books is the Gospel of Thomas. And it's not in the Bible, but I think it deserves a second look. But Jesus reportedly said, be passerby, which means to not be attached to things in the world. And he also said in the Gospel of Thomas reportedly that bring the kingdom in your own life is through movement and repose. And what does that mean? It means repose is a dignified peace, even in movement. So it's not like a Buddhist type of meditation, but it's a sense of peace and bliss within. And it takes loving yourself to do that. And I think being passerby is a critical piece to this, meaning that so much of the world judges us, and we judge ourselves based on the world. The material things that we do, the things, how we're evaluated at work, and the society has so many arbitrary ways to judge us, and then we take that feedback within. But if you keep your soul and eyes on the divine and what's important there, and that's loving yourself, loving other people, and don't pay attention too much to the ways of the world's evaluations, but rather be passerby, then I think you will find that this repose will grow in your lives, and that you will be able to love yourself and others easier.
Thank you. Thank you, Roy. Okay, panelists, any panelist, what does your experience tell you about who humans are? That is, about who you really are from your near-death experience. It's for Deidre.
All right, because I wanted to read this, but I didn't get it in my 10 minutes, so. All right, my main thing I found out is that I am a worthwhile human. I do indeed have purpose in the universe, and if I learn to love others as I was being shown how to love myself, my earthly life will unfold as it should. A human can do no more than this, and that is our gift back to God.
I think we've heard the expression that we are souls having a physical experience in this physical world. And on the one hand, we're flesh and blood. We do have a lot of the qualities of nature. We do have primal aspects of our being. But we also have the capacity to evolve and grow, as we are also spiritual beings. Learning about the universe, learning about God, learning about love, and learning about all the wonderful things that we're learning about here. So we, as the saying goes, we are definitely much more than the sum of our parts. As human beings, we are so many things. We're artists, we're musicians, we're engineers, we're chefs. Even those that pick up the trash. We are so many things that are key and crucial to this world. And whatever that may be, just embrace it for all it is, and embrace the experience for all that it is. We're only, we have just so much time here in this particular life, and make the most of what you have while you have it.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. and your comments too. I tend to look at myself now as basically that spiritual, I consider it a spark of God or a spark of the divine, that I am a piece of the divine and the divine is in me. And I'm here in this physical body just to learn things and to experience it and to have fun and enjoy what life is like on earth. But at my core, I am, I'm not this. I can say I'm an artist, I can say I'm a writer, but that's really not me. The me at my core is really that spark of the divine, that divine soul that is a part of God or the Creator, and that is in me. And I will return to that state that I call home when my physical body dies. So this physical body is kind of a temporary home for a little while, and then I'll go back to the real home whenever my real time is up. Who knows when that is? But at my core, that's what I believe, is that it's really the soul, the spirit, is basically an energy form, an energy spark of the divine.
All right, thank you. Panelists, anyone can answer this. Can you say with certainty that those who have passed on to the other side are still aware of those of us still left behind here on Earth? Are they able to see and know what we are doing here on Earth on a daily basis? Or once they cross over, are they no longer aware of this earthly existence? Any panelists?
I actually write about this quite a bit in my book, and it's one of the things that I was taught extensively during my time in heaven, if you will. But once a soul or once a being crosses over, they can choose to stay in constant contact. They can also choose to move on completely. It's a choice that they make. Although I don't see, what I was told was that it's not really a definite choice. Like once they choose to go on past the ability to come back, they can also come back. So what I was shown in a very visual way was that there really is no separation. We tend to think of heaven as a separate place. It isn't. It's a different state of energy. And I know, and my guide, the woman that was with me, told me and showed me that those people that have passed on before me are right here with me when they choose to be, right now. And then she said something that freaked me out at first. She said, God is with you all the time. And I'm with you all the time. And I went, all the time? And she said, yeah, we're with you all the time. So they can be here with us at any moment. Sometimes they do choose to go on to another, I guess, plane of energy. But oftentimes they will stick around or come back and visit and check up on us or give us help or guide us along the way. So there isn't really a separation. I just wanted to make that clear. There's not a here and there. It's all one.
Yeah, absolutely, totally agree with all that. Life beyond life is something that I also write about and that I meditate on, and I also have done some talks on that as well. And I think ultimately, for the soul that passes on in love, then I think that certainly all applies. I do feel like there are certain souls that do get trapped. They may be in their negative spaces, because I've even seen online, looking at videos, of course, having had the NDE, that I watch a lot of NDE videos. There are those that have had experiences that they believe were hell. Like they thought they went to this horrible place. They thought it was a frightening experience. And I can see where there are perhaps cases where souls can get trapped. They can get lost. They can not even know that they're dead, for that matter. I mean, I think sometimes sometimes we have experiences here on Earth with spirits and ghosts that people witness that are sometimes that's the case. They're trapped on Earth. They don't even know that they're dead, and they're still wandering the physical plane. Now, for the spirit, and ultimately, yes, these souls can all be passed into light. I mean, this whole concept of hell, what have you, that is not forever. The light is eternal. All these other states of existence and experience are not. They're all temporary. Vibrations can always change. So without getting too long-winded about this, I apologize. But yes, I believe that our loved ones oftentimes come back and act as our guardian angels. They protect us. They guide us. They watch out for us. I think that happens quite often. And I think, getting into, again, that state of being, that state of consciousness, like I described earlier, I think, space-time is not relevant at that point. So these souls can exist in multiple spaces at once. So yes, the soul can actually be in light. They could be having experiences elsewhere, but yet at the same time, if you reach out to that loved one, they'll be here. You'll touch them. You'll feel them. You'll know that they're with you. Sometimes, the question's been asked. I've got a very dear friend who's an angel communicator, and I certainly believe in angels, and I call sentient points of light, even sentient points of darkness, if you want to get into this concept of demons and devils and whatnot. But even if you reach out to the angel Jophiel, for example, and then you reach out to her, and then you do, and her, does that mean she's only going to talk to one of us at a time? Not at all. In this space, these beings can be in multiple places at once and have multiple experiences at once and still be completely 100% in the moment. So yes, wrapping this whole long-winded thing up is that yes, these loved ones are aware of our experience here on Earth. They certainly are.
Well, even though I didn't have any other souls or people that, you know, I communicated with like Nancy did, mine was a very singular, solitary thing. It was more the colors and the sounds and the music. But there was a point of knowing, just like now, you know, you think about somebody that you love, and it brings up an emotion. Where does it bring it up? It brings it up in your heart. It brings it up in your soul. Well, they could be across the street or they could be sitting next to you. You're still feeling it in your soul. So just because they've passed over, their body's gone, but the essence of who they are hasn't gone. And like you said, they may be off doing other things, and none of us really know what that is. It's all lessons and learning and going on. But you can go on and go back at the same time. So if you have a loved one and you bring that loved one into your heart, there's no reason in the world that that loved one won't be there with you. Because even when that loved one was 2 inches away from you and you had love for that person, where was that love? It was in your heart, it was in your soul. So it didn't go anywhere, and that person didn't go anywhere. And people do have a tendency to grieve, like, well, they're gone. And, you know, I'll never see them, and, you know, on and on. I mean, I know what grief is. I've had plenty of it in my life. But you know what? All you gotta do, again, it's like looking in the mirror. All you gotta do is go into your heart and bring that person up. And in one way or another, something will happen. It might be a communication, or it might be a feeling. But yes, there is communication. I mean, I didn't have, you know, I wasn't lucky enough to have a spirit guide, but, you know, that's the wonderful thing about these near-death experiences is they're kind of like snowflakes. There's millions and trillions of them, and according to what they say, they're all completely different. But in essence, they're all the same. And I think that's what NDEs are like. You know, you can talk to millions of people like Roy is planning on doing and has already done. But you've you know, interviewed and heard the stories. And the thing is, every single one is different, but at the essence, it's the essence. So don't go for the details. Look at the message. Look at the ultimate message.
Quickly to add to that, even though I have not had a near-death experience, and writing this book was a spiritually transformative experience, as I started reading so many NDEs about people knowing that their spiritual guides are deceased loved ones and others, and that they're not alone, that they're always with them, I had a faith, I developed a faith that I had spiritual guides too. So one night I just said, I know you're there, you might as well introduce yourself. You know what they did? And I was very surprised. And they came to me in image and light, big flashes of light in my head, 4 of them. And they accompanied different images. So, and since then, once I opened that door, it never shut. And since then, I've received similar things and information. So which tells me that they're always there. And usually, if they answer a question, it's like immediate. So I know they're always there. It's a little odd to think that you're never really alone. Which is an odd, coming up from a Baptist background, I was taught that sort of thing is demonic. So it was a bit of a transition for me. But anyway, you don't have to have a huge experience, as it was said here, to know that they're there. They come to you in subtle ways. I call it this gentle nudge. And let me read one excerpt from an India expert. It says, this young woman was in school, and she shares, yes, I see her, I answered in my mind. I've never seen her at school before. She must be new here. I believe that I was speaking back to my own thoughts, my own voice. She looks funny, I remembered, wondering if she was sick. She had black curls in her eyes. The angel continued, speaking in my mind, sounding like my own voice. Why don't you go and talk to her? She looks so afraid and lonely, doesn't she? talk to her. Why? She's not in my class. I'm afraid. I don't want to talk to people I don't know. I don't know what to say. I continued, and I thought it was a conversation with myself. Children can be fearful and cruel, and I was no different, but the angel persisted. So some of the thoughts we maybe think are own thoughts. We're guided through feelings and thoughts and things, dreams sometimes.
That's brilliant. Brilliant passage. Another question, panelists, for any of you. Each of you have described God as the divine, as being an energy felt, seen, and experienced. Can you share with us your thoughts? Can you conceive of God as an energy that's felt?
I guess I'll start with that. The Gestalt means that the sum is greater than the parts. So it's like an orchestra. You're listening to an orchestra, you can hear all the individual instruments, but the whole sound of the orchestra is greater than the sum of the parts. So just to kind of lay what a Gestalt is for folks who may not have heard of that kind of a rare term.
Well, I guess I would say that that's how I conceptualize of the divine is really, it's more than just the sum of all of us as spiritual beings. It's hard in a human sense to conceptualize infinity. We just can't. At least I don't think most of us can. We're confined in this human space. But that's how I tend to think of the divine, as just this incredibly huge, infinite energy of love and acceptance and knowledge and wisdom that's greater than right now than I can imagine.
And yeah, this is just kind of my own crazy thoughts based on my experience. So what I described earlier, that point of pure being in that space of where everything that I described is being all one. You know, all of existence being in that state of superposition. To me, that's that level that's essentially, you know, the source of consciousness, or rather the soul of God. That's the ultimate mind, that's the ultimate point of life, call it spirit or chi, if you will. And I feel like this grand experience that it is, this universe and even the multiverse, is a reflection of that mind. I think it's a little bit overstated to say this is all an illusion. I mean, it's all quite real. We all really are having this experience, even given the distinctly holographic nature of the universe and the respective multiverse. So, in simple terms, that to me sums up what God is. So, God is all forms of energy. Even this solid form is just energy, very, very slowed down and condensed. So, at the end of the day, yes, it is all pure energy.
That was a hard concept, for me initially, because growing up in having the background that I had a tendency to think of God as like us, a person, or if there was one, it was a person. And because of my accident, my lungs were damaged. That was the things that had happened to me. My lungs were so badly contused. And now I realize that every time I take a breath, I'm breathing in God. And God is no longer a thing that's out there or a personable type of image. I'm slowly expanding the awareness to the essence of God is absolutely everywhere. And once you see that, you can't take away that seeing. And the more you see, the more gets shown to you. And the more your understanding of the expansion of God comes into your being. I don't know how to really put words to all of that, but yeah. You said it best. You said it, you nailed on the head. Anyway.
Yeah. Ultimately, it is all God.
Thank you. All right, another question for Nancy. This is sort of a technical and physical question. Very good one. Nancy, was your heart still beating during surgery? That is, to be near death, that status of near death, does that require no heartbeat?
Well, for me, my heart rate at first slowed down and my breathing slowed down and then both stopped. So for me, it was a clinical death. From this, and maybe you can answer this, Roy. I don't know from the standpoint of all other NDEs that have ever happened if you actually have to have full clinical heartbeat stop, breathing stop. For me, that was the case.
I say the majority of near-death experiences I've read is true. Then there's a minority of people who have never died that were in comas. Then there are people who just have unusual experiences of the other side, and rare instances. Those are quite rare. And then we have people who have shared near-death experiences, and those people are with somebody who passes and they can see their passing. So there's appears to be quite a variability.
Thank you. Question for the panel. Do you remember your loved ones when you were on the other side? Were you sad to have left them while you were on the other side?
So I actually, I didn't have an experience like either of these two. I was still I still had a mind and I was still partly human in my mind. So I did actually remember my family while I was in that near-death state. I had thoughts about my sisters and my daughter, and I had actually had a sister who had died in a car accident a few years ago, and the one thought that I had while I was with my guide in heaven was, my sisters are not going to be happy to lose another sister. So there was a little bit of a twinge of regret almost, but at the same time, I knew that they would all be okay whether I was there with them or not. And my core being really truly did want to continue on into the light, basically. But I did remember folks, and I remembered my father who had passed along. I was kind of wondering why I didn't see him, but only in hindsight can I say I'm glad I didn't. It would have been really hard, even much more hard to come back. So I did have memory of my family.
Just real quick, I want to address the previous question. I think one of the reasons why we come back and we have these experiences is to teach everyone that you don't have to fall out of a tree, you don't have to get hit by a car, you don't have to go through and have this profound experience to have these awakenings. I mean, all of this information, this knowledge, this wisdom, these depths that are inherent within every single one of us. It's just a matter of being able to find our way. And yes, it's true. In my case, I'm not 100% sure that my heart officially did stop. I was constantly in respiratory crash. I stopped breathing and had to be resuscitated multiple times. So as far as whether my heart officially stopped through all that, I can't say for sure. But regardless of that, I definitely had this incredibly profound experience, which was completely life-altering. But getting into the follow-up question, in the case of my NDE, like I said, I felt everything. I felt the all-in-the-one. And one thing that was interesting about it is I remember being there, and it's like having a dream. Like how many people have been in the middle of a dream, sleeping, and realizing you're dreaming, and be able to take that dream over. That's something that I've been able to do, off and on throughout my life, and this NDE was like the ultimate example of that. I was completely aware that I was right there on the cusp of death. I knew that I was right in this space. And there was a part of me that wanted to go and explore, because on the one hand, I knew I was coming back. I was not given the choice. And I also knew that I could feel the energies of my loved ones around me that had passed. I knew they were there, but I was not allowed to go any further. So even though I was not given the choice about coming back, I know that had I gone any further, I really, really, really probably would have done the kicking and screaming thing about coming back. So yes, I absolutely felt the presence of those loved ones and those spirits being close.
Well, I think I answered that one pretty good earlier. But no, I was totally the only presence in the midst of my experience at all was the presence of God. And I did lose the knowledge of the human form. But yet, when I understood all of consciousness, it was funny because I did feel all the other souls that had ever existed or would ever exist. So there was some thread of humanity in there, but it went beyond that. It went beyond how I can actually even describe it. But were there, faces and things? At one point, it was almost like I was given a joystick. And with all the colors and everything that I had seen, it was like, here, what do you want to do? What do you want to create? And I was like, what? And a human thought went through, was like, well, I always wanted to be a clothing designer. And it was like, well, do it. And I had the most fabulous fashion show in my near-death experience. I am telling you, really. But there were no faces, there were no people in those clothes, but that didn't seem weird. And I created things that had never been created before. And they were all sewn with gold thread. And as they walked down this kind of runway kind of thing, it went beyond that physicalness, and I realized that what God had given me was the ability to co-create with Him, like you said. And I realized that it wasn't the fashion show, it wasn't the clothes, it was the essence of co-creating with God. And I can be washing the dishes now, and all of a sudden I'm there in the moment, and I'm realizing I'm co-creating this moment with God. And you know what? Those dishes look beautiful. But as far as in the actual experience itself, no, there was no, physical images or people or relatives.
Thank you. Another question. Some NDEers see what their future life will be when they're on the other side. What does this say about free will? Any panelist?
I would say that this idea of free will and destiny, I think of what in the sense we're going to talk about the idea of multiple realities and parallel universes, and every probability and possibility has essentially been accounted for, but the experience still has to be created. And in the moment of creating an experience, we have complete and total free will in how we create that experience and what part of the experience and the role we play within that.
Many individuals say that they realize that they chose their life before they're born to learn what lessons they need to learn on school earth. So in a sense it's predestined, but you know what? When we come down here we have amnesia of that, and that is for a very important purpose, and that is to give us free will. So even though time doesn't have the same meaning here, the future, present, and past are more like a singularity, like a loaf of bread that's been cut up, you can look at it different ways when you're up there. We don't have that down here. We have a linear flow of now and the future for the same special purpose, to allow us the gift of free will to choose our own lives. So predestination and free will go hand in hand, oddly enough.
So I actually was given a little bit of a view of what my immediate future might hold, and I say might hold, depending on the choices that I make. And Roy is exactly right. When we come here, we have amnesia. And part of the learning process truly is learning how to make good or appropriate choices for what we want to accomplish. And sometimes we get off track and we're not on the track that we agreed to be on when we came here. But it's all up to us once we come here to make those right choices, and right is really individual. But we do have, in every moment we have a choice. We have a choice whether to walk in the light, or we have a choice whether to make take a darker path, or to take an ignorant path. And so in each moment we have a choice. We have choices in how we treat others. We have choices in how we treat ourselves. You know, very practical choices like what job to take, or, you know, for me, what painting to do next, or, you know, where to go on my next trip. But in each moment, we do have an opportunity to make the choice that's appropriate for our own path. And it's okay if we mess up, because we all mess up. I mean, I still mess up. I know Dee said the same thing. We all still mess up. It's okay. It's not going to be the end of the world. We can then make another choice to bring us back on our path. So it's all right. Just kind of roll with it.
All right, the next question, panelists. Did anyone, when you were on the other side, did anyone feel like they had prior lives during their NDE? And based on that, what are your thoughts around reincarnation?
Reincarnation's a choice. We can choose to come back, for sure. And that was explicitly stated to me. We can choose not to, or we can choose to. I didn't actually see any of my past lives. I was shown the totality of my own, I guess, history, so that I had past lives, but I wasn't given any specifics on those. But again, it is a choice that we can come here or not at any point we choose. Or just throw this out there, we can go other places too.
Yes, absolutely believe in the concepts of reincarnation. I feel like we have our human path, but we also have a soul path. And as suggested already, is that you know, in the realm of the soul, is not going through the passage of the arrow of time the way we are, when it's not going, you know, past, present, and future, moment by moment by moment. So ultimately, yes, it is a choice. It's part of, you know, the soul path choice. But at the same time, we can have multiple lives on Earth. We can have lives on other worlds, other dimensions, other vibrations. I mean, existences that can seem virtually godlike compared to the existence we have here, or even an existence as a single-celled microbe. And, you know, as I was talking about the idea of God experiencing God's self through all of us, it also experiences through everything as well. You know, from the single-celled microbe to, you know, an entire universe and beyond. So, yeah, it's a quite dynamic, the potentials of the experience that exist.
Well, I didn't have that per se. Again, mine was a little bit different, but there was the understanding when I had the knowledge of all souls. It was the flowing knowledge that, again, it's all one. So reincarnation didn't even, I mean, that wasn't even anything that was a part of my NDE, except for knowing that, yes, it exists. And in these lives, I know that God weaves from whatever choices we make. And, you know, besides the gift of life, the greatest second gift that we were given was the gift of choice. And so whatever we choose, whether we choose good or whether we choose bad, God can weave it for good. I mean, yeah, certain things you might think are predestined, but the choice of what you do and where your heart is, that's yours. God gives that to you. We all have choice. And everything that happens in your life, you might not have control over it, like the life you were born into. And maybe you did choose it, you know? But if you did, if you chose it, then you're in this life now. So every single thing that you do with this life is a choice.
And that would include fulfilling your destiny. If you believe you have a destiny in your life, it is your choice to pursue that destiny or not.
All right, 2 more questions. On Earth, panelists, why is there so much fear, and why are we so uptight?
That's a good question. It's fine. Love keeps it up. Maybe from another past experience.
You know, things that we experience here on Earth are all lessons. And even everything that we think that is not well will be well. One of my favorite authors is somebody who had a near-death experience almost 700 years ago, Julian Norwich. And she said that nothing here on this earth is for the bad. And we do stress out about so many things, and we need to be passerby to those things. And death has no sting. We heard up here how people didn't want to come back. So, yeah, chill out. That's I like it. I like it. And that gives us so much freedom when we don't have so much stress.
Yeah, that's actually been a very difficult part of my coming back is learning how to deal with the abundance of fear out there. And I would say I think part of it comes from just being human, and we have a biology, and our biology has evolved to be a certain way, and it's evolved, to protect us. Part of that fear is a self-protection mechanism that we've learned as biological beings over millennia. We fear snakes, or we fear, lions and tigers. But also society teaches us in large part how to fear. And I don't want to kind of go off on this tangent really too much, but it almost seems, and I hate to use this word, but there almost seems like there's this conspiracy to keep us in fear. And that conspiracy or that sense of society wanting to keep us fearful, it keeps us tame, really. It keeps us walking in a very specific path that's very predictable. If you can break out of it, part of it is learning to not fear death. That was my big aha moment for me, was learning that if I'm not afraid to die, what's there really to be afraid of? Nothing. And so for me, it completely removed a lot of, the vast majority of any fear that I had. But I think a lot of it comes from, society. We're a predictable bunch if we're kept in fear. So that's my personal thoughts on that. So if we can break out of that and chill out, well, we'd all be much better off, I think.
Good times. Hey, I was an activist last year. It broke my heart. And I was like, you know what? I still love people. That's why we're here. Truly.
And yes, completely agree with everything. I think that's absolutely spot on. And just to add another element to that is that I think fear of the unknown is really a big part of this. I think a lot of our world is really designed to draw us outside of ourselves, especially outside of contemplating things like death. We're conditioned to fear death. We're conditioned not to talk about death. In fact, some people consider it morbid to talk, get into such a discussion. When in fact it's something that's inherent in every single one of our lives. I mean, everything that is alive will die. The earth one day will die, the sun will die, the universe even, as we know it, will die. And that in and unto itself, it goes beyond most people's realm of understanding. And because we live in a world that just draws us outside of ourselves, focus on going out and partying and going out, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying don't go have fun, don't go have a couple of drinks, that's not what I'm saying at all. But there's a lot of things on TV that distract us, that draw us out. We've got to pay bills, we've got to make money, there's the economy, there's all these things going on in the world. I mean, it all breeds fear. And ultimately, I think it comes down to this concept that so many people have very little understanding or desire to even want to contemplate what it is to die. Which is perhaps the most basic and primal aspect of our existence. So it is that fear of the unknown, and because I believe, that God created us as inquisitive beings. God wants us to know God. God wants us to know what is beyond our life. I mean, it's in the nature of our very existence, and that information is inherent within all of us, as I stated earlier. And I think that's going to go a long way towards conquering that fear, giving confidence to ourselves and understanding our connectivity, and thereby showing us, an innate sense of loving one another. Even if it's somebody you don't agree with, they may be different, you don't even have to like them to even love them. But still, ultimately, yes, chill out, relax, let things be, and just let the love flow. And ultimately that fear will die, because fear is the distractor to love, but love is the conqueror of fear.
Well, I think we fear so much is because the earth as a whole, society, we've forgotten that we're spiritual beings. So we cleave and we hang on to everything that's material, and we forget where we came from. So when you see material things falling away and disintegrating and the horrible things that happen in this world, what do you have to hang on to? Nothing. So if you don't develop the spiritual being that you are, you're going to be living in fear, because fear doesn't exist in love. Fear doesn't exist where God is. And so the more you can recognize the spiritual side of yourself and cultivate it and open it up to who you are, the fear starts to go away. And this fell out of my notebook today as I was getting ready, and I thought, because I always ask and I always pray and I always meditate. I know that there's things that I want to say when I'm up here, but I've been writing for the past 5 years, and so I always ask God, what is it I'm supposed to say, not just what I want to say. And this is where this kind of fits in, so I'll put it in here. The realness of life does not end when does the body, nor does the workings of how it is all to be. Much understanding comes when listening with the heart, for it opens you to whom and what you truly are in the sight of who created and loved you as always and in always from the start of time. Seek not the learning from others, seek not the ways and the knowing that is placed before you from within the world. It is the light and love from your very own knowing that will ignite the ways and means for you to grow by and learn what you can become. So I guess I was supposed to say this.
Excellent, excellent. So this is about when you were on the other side, is what you experienced at all like the movies about heaven? And speaking of which, we do have a movie here available to you today. The Day I Died, the mind, the brain, and the near-death experiences. So here's another movie. So panelists, what are your thoughts? Was it like the movies about heaven, about the other side?
I have to admit that I haven't seen any of those movies. I've been there, so I don't need to see them. There was one movie that I saw recently, though. It's an older movie with Kate Hudson, and it's Kate Hudson and Whoopi Goldberg, and I talked about it in our workshop. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but in this movie, Kate Hudson was a woman dying of cancer, and she had a few NDEs during her treatment days, and she met God, who happened to look like Whoopi Goldberg, which I thought was great. But some of the inklings that the Whoopi's character, the God character in that movie talked about are spot on, and I encourage you to look it up if you can. What Whoopi's character talked about, after Kate Hudson's character mentioned, why does God look like Whoopi Goldberg? And God said, well, I've taken this form to make it easier for you and I to communicate because you like Whoopi so much. I want you to be comfortable with me. And that's one of the things that I noticed during my time in my NDE was, in order to communicate the best with me, things were made so that I could understand them. So that's one kernel of truth from that one particular movie. I haven't seen the other movies, so I can't really comment on those.
I would say that based on my own personal experience, I think that they're all rather unique. You know, and I've seen movies like Jacob's Ladder, What Dreams May Come. I think the movie Dogma as well even has an interesting portrayal of God with Alanis Morissette, which I thought was quite brilliant. All trying to get the answers of life, and all she could do is walk up to the gentleman who asked and just go, boom, on the end of his nose and have a little laugh, and that was it. That kind of was an interesting reflection of God, because I think, you know, the humor and the lightness, that's a great reflection. I guess the point I'm making is that, much like near-death experiences, I think the experiences themselves are all very unique. I think that the two of us have had something that was somewhat similar. She's had something that's different, and as I look at all of the different experiences out there, then I think it makes a lot of sense. I mean, when there's communications that are coming through, a lot of it has to do with how God can appeal to somebody in the best way so that they can understand, that they can relate and connect. If someone's Muslim, they're going to maybe have a Muslim experience. If someone's Christian or Jew, they're going to have an experience that's appropriate to that. The one commonality to all of these experiences, I think including the movies, is that the essence of it all is that sense of profound, deep, pure love. So.
I guess I just think all those movies that are out there, they're wonderful. They're like all the snowflakes. You know, it's just a different, each movie's a different snowflake.